Hi guys, I finally decided to change my speakers. Full vintage. Want to know more? Stay tuned. Okay everyone, welcome back to Dialogue, the dialogue on analog music pre-production from a strange place. Actually the lower part of my system. And here behind me you can see my new purchase. Even though it's a quite old model, it probably has around 50 years. Oh yes. So the most careful, the most observant of you maybe have noticed in the last episodes that I did not have my Golden Ear Triton reference behind me. They're still there, but they're probably going to go away because these babies are here to stay. What are these? Altec Lansing Model 19. Oh yes. In all their full vintage Hornish glory. Yep. In the end, I fell in love with their sound, with their looks, with the whole package, the concept. But let's take one step at a time. Let's take a look first at the main characteristics. Then we'll take a look actually at some tweaks and tips I want to give to those who are interested or already have their Altec 19s. And then afterwards, I want to explain a little bit more on the sound. What caught me, what convinced me compared to other things I've been listening in these years. Not only the Golden Ear. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Okay, so these are the evolution of the famous Altec Valencia. So they come directly after that, practically. And they've been introduced in 1976. And they went on all around 1985. So not that much, but there are quite a number of models out there. And also I remember a picture, for example, Bob Ludwig had a pair in his mastering facility. And not only him, a lot of people did buy this incredible leap, advancement in sound. Because these are monitor loudspeakers. Probably a little distant from our modern concept of monitor speakers. I did have a pair of monitor speakers from ATC, the SCM35. The first model you've seen on this channel, actually. But before proceeding, I just want to give you a few specs to understand these behemoths. Now the dimensions, these are going for, I have to read, 30 by 39 by 21 inches. In centimeters, that is 76 by 99 by 55 centimeters. They're huge. They're huge. It was very difficult to unbox them and bring them here. Me and my wife are probably going to kill me every time there's a new pair of speakers. She hates me a lot. Reasonably. What else? They weigh each 143 pounds, which is more or less 65 kilograms. Whoa, baby. There's something more bigger, clearly now, but at the time, if you think about it, these were quite striking. These are a two-way, as you can see, type of speakers. They are bass reflex, and they have these drivers that practically come from the famous VOT, the voice of the theater, where Altec started to create its incredible loudspeakers for the theaters. A lot of people actually do like more that model, those models. Actually, the one coming from these are the A7 and the A8. because there are a lot of models of the voice of the theater, and a lot of people put them in their homes. I mean, they're meant to be used in huge places. So I don't know how that works, actually. Already these are pretty big for my environment, but they work. I mean, my space here is quite big and decently a reasonable amount of height. So I need that pressure. So we have a 15-inch woofer here below, which is the 416-8B, which was done at the beginning in the first stages of production. And then it was changed, very similar to the 416-BZ. But practically the encapsulation, the covers of the motor changes. Not that much else, actually. And they have an Alnico type of magnets, which a lot of people hate, but a lot of people love, which is something typical of the vintage speakers. Alnico, for those who don't know what they are, it's a different kind of magnet that was used a lot in the past. It's an alloy, clearly based on iron, but mainly Alnico stands for Al, aluminum, and I, nickel, and cobalt. So it's an alloy of these. And a lot of people claim that they have a special warmth. Also in the Klipsch, the old Klipsch heritage line had the Alnico, and I must say that I don't have that much experience, but I do sense a difference compared to other speakers with this type of dimensions of woofers listened in other environments, friend's house, fairs and things like that. I do understand what they're talking about. There is a special, because there is practically something measurable, a true distortion, which does give that special timbre. On top, we have something truly spectacular, which in my opinion can compare to modern high-end models of tweeters. As I said, horn-loaded tweeter, the 811B, again Alnico magnet, with this special tangerine radial phase plug, they call it, for an extra velocity and just a better frequency extension. Delivered in a better way, they say. And I must admit that it is incredible. And this was a huge leap in technology, because they were still using, up until that, the Western Electric models of the 1920s, the round, simple ones. So very cool. And it really does look as a tangerine if you take a look. In fact, the frequency response of these is pretty good, I must admit. For a completely passive speaker, oh boy. These go, on paper, from 30 hertz all the way up to 20 kilohertz. And for the 70s, pretty good once again. All that you need is there, I would say. It's an 8 ohm speaker. Maybe something uncommon for that time. Usually, at least when I buy vintage stuff, I see lower type of resistance, of impedance. The sensitivity, that is one of the main reasons why I wanted to buy something like this. Actually, I was preparing, and I probably will release a specific video on my search of high sensitivity speakers. I was looking for something for a very long time. The main problem is that they are extremely expensive, the ones made today. Very high end, very high quality, but extremely expensive. So when you start looking towards vintage, you find amazing things like this with a very high sensitivity, meaning very efficient, meaning you can use these babies. As you can see, I have on top my Macintosh MC30s. I did a complete review on these life-changing amplifiers, power amplifiers. Here is a link. You're going to find the links also in the video description. And finally, deciding to go vintage. Another choice I was about to get was the Klipsch horn, even though you do need corners for that. La Scala were a little too small. Frequency extension wasn't that good. These hit the soft spot on all aspects. even though they're not fully horn loaded. They are two-way, normal driver, cone, paper driver, and a horn. But I like the combination. The combination does have its ups, its cons, and pros, which I will discuss afterwards. So the sensitivity, as I was saying, is 101. It depends also from how you touch these, how you regulate the crossover, how you set that. It can go down from 99, they say, all the way to 102. So it depends. In the middle, let's say 101, which is a lot. I mean, in fact, they say that you can power these with a 10-watt amplifier minimum, all the way up to 350. A lot of people say you should use a little more power than normal, even though they're very efficient. I think that with a quality, low power amplifier, meaning a low number of watts, tube amplifier, you are dealing with something exceptional and you don't need that much. Even though these are, as you know, 30. Nominal 30, they're even more actually. As take a look at that video, I've explained why it's more around 35, 38 watts per channel. Okay, so now let's try to give a few tips and tweaks. And these are just a few things I've noticed along my journey while setting these up, tuning them, listening them, because they are vintage, they are old, and they need more assistance, more work on these. Nevertheless, already out of the box, if we could say that, they were delivering a lot, in my opinion. So I'm going to list a few things, suggestions I have, but please do the same. Those of you that already have an Altec Model 19 or had in their life and have some tips and tricks, please write them here below in the comments. It's going to be very useful, clearly for me, but for the community as well. Okay, let's start. Well, the few beginning ones are quite banal, obvious, but I want to share them with you. Okay, the first one, since it's a bass reflex, clearly you should have some space behind when you hear a little too much of boomy. But it depends. It depends from the room. It depends from the music you're listening. It depends from a lot of things, clearly. I have them right back up because it's convenient for me. I must admit that at least 50, 70 centimeters would help to have a better effect. In fact, sometimes I pull them out and the things get better. You should also find a good solution in their positioning, in toning in a little bit. But they work pretty good. They have a good stereo image, decent, not exceptional, even put like that flat. Obviously, I do not recommend to use their beautiful grills because the sound, even though they claim this does not impact on the overall results, it does. Clearly, it does. So might as well listen to nothing else like that, nice and naked. I do recommend to use some damping feet, although a lot of people I've noticed put these on pedestals because they have a sense that they are too low, which is, I do understand. But we must bear in mind that Altec, the engineers, designed this in order to have the drivers hit the floor in this way. So if you put them too much up, you're kind of changing that sound signature and the results. So we must remember that. So if we change the feet, perhaps taking away the little wooden part below or simply putting it behind, there'll be just a few centimeters of difference, not even, and that's perfectly okay. And it'll give much more control because this wooden base, it's a little flimsy and it jolts, it moves around. So that's highly recommended. A solution to make it more firm overall, I would say. Not necessarily the Gaias or something like that. But just as they are, not the best solution. Another element that I recommend, not fundamental at all, is that in most cases, when you buy a pair of these, you're not going to have the foam here. It's not going to be there. You're just going to have the metal part, which is okay. But clearly the engineers did know that when the sound comes out, it kind of turns back and bounces off this part all around. So if you have foam, you reduce that thrilling, those high I don't know how to say this in English actually, those high kind of brilliant reflections, resonance that you do hear sometimes with specific music, with specific instruments. So this does help. Very difficult to find. I got them for $120 on eBay for a pair of these from a guy on eBay who sells only that practically. But they are a perfect replica. So it's also an aesthetic fact, I must admit. And in fact, the sonic, the performance did get a little bit better. Just a little bit though. Okay, one important mod. I hate mods. I practically never do them because I want the original thing. But there is one mod connected to these loudspeakers that practically everybody does. It's completely reversible, so might as well try, and I did, is that the crossover, apparently, over time, the ground, the connections to the ground may oxidize, may have some problems. They're not connecting, they're not delivering the ground optimally. So in a lot of forums, if you just go around, you can find some indications to connect, to bypass practically the ground of the crossover.
Okay guys, since the photographs online and the forums are not clear, I decided to do this little additional video just to show you the ground bypass mod for the Altec 19. So here is the crossover that I have unscrewed. It's already been modified, and the mod regards practically, let's see if I can show you, these 4 rivets where the all the electrical part is fixed on the board. So something like this, okay? I think you can see them. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I connected them with this gray cable. I think you can follow it, like a horseshoe. 1 to 2, 2 all the way here to 3, and 3 to 4. That's it. At that point, you're bypassing everything and things should be better.
And in that way, they're all connected through pieces of cable that you will solder directly to the different parts, the metal parts between them. And I must admit that the sound did bloom. Now, on the web, on the forums, people were ripping their hair off. Incredible. You know, it changed completely. A different loudspeaker. No, at least not in my experience. It is true that my crossover is all 100% original, okay? I didn't change anything. And maybe I should. I mean, it's just a crossover. It does change the sound signature clearly. But I do like to keep the original caps, the original parts, everything if possible. But at a certain point, if they're not up to spec enough, it's better to change everything. And maybe at that point, things could be even better with this mod, I must admit. In my situation, it changed. It did. It's positive. I do recommend it. But not a night and day difference. No, not at all. Another important point I would like to suggest, speaker cables. Now, I started off with my nice big fat cables I got, but they were good, but nothing special. So I decided, considering that the connectors behind, actually underneath, that's a downside of these loudspeakers. The connectors are underneath. In fact, a lot of people put them behind. They change them. You just have to drill a hole and you can change everything. It's very easy. The connectors are so small, and also the cables that connect the 2 drivers to the crossover are very, very thin, something typical of the past. I decided to go and get extremely thin cables, which one would think, oh my God, the resistance is going to go up skyrocket high, and the sonics are going to be terrible. No, guys. Now, this is a big recommendation I give you. I'm going to give you. In fact, another tweak connected to this, which I highly recommend, is also to change the cables, the wiring inside. Very easy. They're just two little strings coming from 1 and 2, so 4 who go here. You just have to unsolder the ones here, unclip the ones from the drivers, and you're set. And you have perhaps OCC silver or OCC copper throughout. Well, not in a crossover, but you could do even that if you want. But already if you do these things, the sound is going to get much better. Something else that a lot of people do, and I think sometimes you just do it because you're afraid you're not getting the maximum from this speaker, is to re-gauss or remagnetize the alnico in this case, but in general, with vintage speakers, the magnets. Because it is true. Unfortunately, maybe it could be a surprise for someone, but the magnets do lose their magnetic power over time. Especially if you did not treat them right. If the temperature changed a lot, if it went very warm, if it went very cold, if there were other sources, other things that influenced the magnetization around it. There's so many factors that can, even a hard bump, even if you hit them, maybe you don't see anything on the surface, but it loses its magnetic capabilities. So there are some labs who offer the service to recharge, remagnetize them, and put them back to full magnetization, the full magnetization. I don't know. I don't think I need that. I'm not sure 100%. Maybe one day I'll do it. But I think sometimes we're overdoing things with these vintage stuff. I mean, if you don't sense some degradation in some frequencies, I wouldn't touch that, because I have the sensation that remagnetizing today with the machines, not certified by Altec, not done with the right, correct way. There are professionals who know exactly how to do it, but a lot of people I'm sure don't, and don't have enough powerful machines, could mess up with it. So be careful with that, okay? One last recommendation, actually it's more of a suggestion, is that there is, fortunately, I would say, a shop, an audio enterprise company, Great Plains Audio, who stems directly from Altec. People who are working at Altec now work there. And they are reproducing, they are making a lot of pieces, components, including the drivers and the crossover and things like that, practically identical, and they say sometimes even better from a spec point of view than the Altec originals. I'm more of an original guy. Nevertheless, it's good to know that if I want to experience, explore, or if I have a problem, instead of hunting down for a new vintage one or pair, maybe it could be the case to try the new drivers, which clearly are fresh and ready to go. So it's good to know. I'll put a link of Great Plains Audio just for to complete the information. Okay, guys, now I just want to give you a few details, a few indications of my impressions of the sound. Why I decided to keep these, why I decided to change them, what happened. Well, I also tried other stuff, which I will present probably on this channel in the future, but this is the final result. And I must admit that it was an incredible journey. Now, it wasn't a huge journey. I just tried a couple more loudspeakers, but compared to these modern ones, guys, vintage is really winning me over. First, the Macintosh, incredible. Then I remember the CD player from Marantz. I presented, here is a link. Clearly all the cassette decks, but it has to be vintage. It's just a different sound, okay? And there was something, I remember I said this, I underlined this in my review of the Golden Ear Triton reference. Here is a link. Once again, all the links are in the video description. That you could sense that the lower frequencies were, I don't want to say digitalized. They were, because there was a DSP inside. But you could just sense they weren't passive drivers. There was another amplifier inside that was doing the work together with the other drivers, which were passive. And that is something that you just sense. Now, a casual listener, obviously, no. But when you're there, just tasting, enjoying yourself, special instruments, jazz music, classical music, chamber music, with those nuances, those where every little aspect, every little reverberation, the timbre of the instruments, every little aspect counts, and you can hear that clearly when you have a speaker that is not passive. I do think you do hear that, and it does create some artificial parts of the sound, let's say like that. Absolutely enjoyable. I love those speakers. They're right there and they're looking at me. Hi. And I like them a lot. But these are just more natural. They're less precise. They lack a lot of stuff. They don't go in depth that much, clearly. They're not that refined. But this is just a more natural, true, as I always say, I'm sorry to repeat myself, engaging experience that just draws you inside the music, that just makes you feel, listen to something natural, realistic, but not realistic in terms of fidelity, not necessarily. Also maybe, also probably, but also just the way the music is perceived by your ears and brain and body is just more natural, I would say. That's the first main thing I need to say. Then for the rest, I do sense that there is somehow a detachment, let's say, in the music from these two drivers. This is a type of sound. This is another type of sound. Horn and drivers, the woofer, huge woofer driver like that. And I think they're not perfectly merged. That's the big, I would say, weak point of these. They're excellent, they're fantastic, but I'm sure you can find something better. Probably fully horned, I would say, maybe, probably, I don't know, or something more hybrid, where you, maybe like the Klipsch ones, probably, where you have a more, a better melting in, a better combination of the different sound signatures, which could be something also tied to the crossover. Don't get me wrong. I still have to experiment. These are some sensations, but I do sense this, the difference between these two drivers. And I must admit that the sound of the horn is incredible. I mean, I love it. A lot of people praise the driver, which is excellent, but in my opinion, the horns and the tweeters, whoa, baby. I mean, yes, I feel that I didn't say enough about the sound signature of these babies. And a lot of people understandably complain about this in other videos. So I was editing the final video. I do want to add some other further comments. Well, let's just say that, as I was saying, the horns are incredible, okay? The high frequencies are just fantastic, dramatic. The impact is so believable, natural sounding, clearly with horns and things like that. I mean, instruments like jazz, it's just perfect. These are perfect loudspeakers for jazz or chamber music, I would say. The dynamic woofer clearly delivers a very strong impact, deep, controlled bass note. Nice and natural. I love it. The high sensitivity with a tube amp will really make that part shine. Fantastic. Although you do have to remember it's a bass reflex, so you have to pull it a little outside, I think, from a little distance from the wall. Not too much, otherwise it booms a little bit. But when everything is perfectly tuned and they are playing together, even though I said that, I do sense sometimes the difference between these two types of drivers with that the combination. When it's perfectly working together, the synergy is magical. The mid-range, no problems there. I love them. I like them a lot. The voices are very, very natural sounding, rich. Nothing is missing. I mean, the whole register is just fantastic. I love them a lot. Although it is true that the mid-range is recreated by a little bit of both. So in my opinion, if the crossovers are not perfectly tuned, I think you may have a little bit of suffering in that region, in the mid-range, okay? That, if I have to point out a soft point, not a soft point, a weak point of these, if they're not perfectly up to spec, there's where they're suffering maybe a little bit. But the overall sensation, the overall quality of all frequencies, they're monitor speakers in the end, is just astonishing for being a 50-year-old project. Okay, guys, we've reached the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your comments here below. And remember, after all, that music is born analog, especially with these guys. Bye!
Well, guys, if you're enjoying my videos and you're enjoying my channel, please consider to subscribe by clicking the black and white logo here below. Also, don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode and you will become a true member of the analog community.